Hello everyone, this is Blister again bringing you another classic WoW video. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about how to choose a race in classic WoW. Starting up a character is always fun to do, but sometimes it can be a challenge to figure out what you want to play. We've already gone over how you can decide what class you want to play, but that's only half the battle. If you haven't seen that video yet, there is a link down in the description, and I suggest you go check it out before you watch this one. Once you've nailed down your class, it will help you determine what race you will end up playing. In Classic, your race actually used to matter, and it was important to choose a race that was going to be most beneficial for you. For most players, the most important part of choosing a race was the racials. Usually, these are for min-maxing your DPS, but there are also racials that are good for tanking, healing, and even PvP situations. We're going to take a look at all the races and how well their racials work for both PvP and PvE environments. While we do go through them, keep in mind what you would rather do, PvP or PvP. To start off, we're going to look at the Dwarf. The Dwarf has Stone Form, Gun Specialization, Frost Resistance, and Find Treasure. The best racial the Dwarf has is by far Stone Form. While it can be pretty useful in PvP against, say, a rogue, it can be quite good for tanks and raids. The extra armor is just enough to get you through a big hit from a boss. The Frost Resistance is equally helpful for both PvP and PvE. In PvP, it will be a nice advantage against some Frost Mages though. In PvE, it will be useful for once you get to Nax, but before you get there, the advantages for PvE are very hit and miss. Gun Specialization is pretty deceiving. Yes, it is good if you're rolling a hunter, but at endgame there aren't very many guns to choose from. And in fact, most of the time while you're at cap, you're going to be using a bow. Unless you're PvPing. Then this could be a pretty good racial. All in all, in terms of racials for a Dwarf, a hunter would be pretty decent for PvP, while a warrior would be really good for PvE tanking. That being said, if you want to play a priest, you should probably just pick a Dwarf just for the Fear Ward. That is, if you want to play Alliance. I didn't list this above because it's just for priests, but Dwarf priests specifically get a racial for Fear Ward. Up next is the Gnome. The Gnome has 4 different racials: Escape Artist, Expansive Mind, Arcane Resistance, and Engineering Specialist. Engineering PvP Mage. Escape Artist screams PvP, and Expansive Mind screams Caster. Knowing that, a PvP Mage seems logical for a Gnome. Arcane Resistance is really only going to help you in PvP. It'll be very helpful against Hunters and some Mages. However, that 5% increased intelligence makes the Gnome a good choice for pretty much any kind of caster. And the Engineering Specialist is just going to make it a lot harder for you to choose a profession other than engineering. Next up is the Human. The Human actually has 5 racials: Diplomacy, the Human Spirit, Mace Specialization, Sword Specialization, and Perception. The Human Spirit is going to be very useful for any healer, whether it be a Paladin or a Priest. Mace and Sword Spec is going to be very helpful for DPS and also for tanking. The weapon skill is going to make it so you just have that little bit of reassurance that you're actually going to be able to hit your target. Perception is great for PvP. Humans were almost always picked for the race of choice when it came to Alliance PvP. That being said, Mace Spec Rogues, DPS Warriors, and Paladins, and healers in general, are very good options for humans in both PvP and PvE. And lastly for the Alliance is the Night Elf. The Night Elf has Shadow Meld, Quickness, Wisp Spirit, and Nature Resistance. Compared to humans and dwarves, it really doesn't look like the Night Elves offer much in terms of racials. Despite that, they're still one of the most commonly picked races in Classic for Alliance. The dodge you get from Quickness can be pretty nice for tanks and the occasional melee encounter for PvP. Shadow Meld has its uses here and there, and it'll definitely be helpful while you're leveling up to be able to drop aggro on something, but it's most likely going to be used commonly for PvP. Your Wisp form is going to be nice for leveling, again, because, while you're leveling, you're going to die quite a bit, and you're going to get that extra 50% movement buff. And lastly, nature resist is nice for pretty much all aspects of the game. If I had to nail down a suggestion for the Night Elf, I would probably say warrior tanks or just druids, because I mean it's the only race for the Alliance that can play a druid, and that's pretty much the only reason why. But on to the horde. Let's start off with the orc. The orc has blood fury, hardiness, command, and axe specialization. Orcs were pretty amazing in Classic. I mean, just look at these racials. They were great hunters, they were great warlocks because of command. Blood fury is amazing for melee DPS. Axe specialization just made it even more amazing for melee DPS. And hardiness makes for an amazing PvP racial, as well as being great for tanking. If you plan on being horde and maining a melee DPS, I would highly suggest orc, regardless of whether you plan to play PvP or PvE. I would also suggest an orc for any horde wanting to play, say, a warlock. Next up for the horde, we're going to look at the Tauren. The Tauren have War Stomp, Endurance, Cultivation, and Nature Resistance. War Stomp, Endurance, and Nature Resistance are all great to make a Tauren a perfect PvP machine. Endurance is going to be a nice talent also for anyone wanting to be a tank. As well as Nature Resistance. Nature Resistance is going to be good for all situations. As far as the Tauren are concerned, I would recommend playing either a tank or a melee DPS in PvP. Next up is the Troll. The Troll have Berserking, Regeneration, Beast Slaying, and Throwing/Bow specialization. Berserking is a weaker version of Blood Fury. However, it also works for casting, and it doesn't reduce your incoming heals, making this the best racial you can get for a caster on the horde side. Regeneration is great for all playstyles. Beast Slaying is most likely going to be useful while you're leveling, but you will see the occasional raid boss that is actually a beast where this could be useful. However, for PvP, this really doesn't help you at all. And lastly, the Throwing/Bow specialization is going to be the best hunter racial you can get for the horde. If you do want to play a troll, I would definitely look at a hunter, or any type of caster, just because of the berserking buff. And lastly, we have the Undead. The Undead have Will of the Forsaken, Cannibalize, Underwater Breathing, and Shadow Resistance. The best racials for the Undead are by far Will of the Forsaken and Cannibalize. Both of them just jump off the screen as PvP skills. Not only that, it's going to be great for all classes in PvP. If you want a PvP on the horde side, the Undead should get a serious look. I know we gave a lot of love to the Orc, but we should also not count out the Undead because they have some great racials when it comes to PvP. Will of the Forsaken is a free trinket, and Cannibalize is just going to let you stabilize after every fight. Shadow Resistance is going to be helpful more in PvP, mainly because you're not going to need Shadow Resistance until you really get to Nax. That being said, if you're going to play Undead, I would just say go for PvP. I don't know what you would really want to choose for PvE. None of these really help you too much. But if you want to just play an Undead, I mean, by all means, go do it, man. All of this being said, if you don't want to min-max your stats, your DPS, your HPS, or your sustainability, I would highly recommend looking at the casting animations of the races in Classic. You're going to be spending a lot of time looking at your character, and it's really important to make sure that you're enjoying what you're actually seeing on the screen. Just hop on and look at the animations, and if you can't find enough of the different animations you want to look at, head over to Wowhead, because they have the casting animations in their 3D model viewer. Hopefully this will be helpful to you guys. I know I look at the racials when I start a new character, but I usually take the aesthetics route by the end of what I'm trying to decide to make, because I spend hours on end with a character, and if I don't like looking at it, then I'm not going to have the drive to continue to play it. If you guys have anything you want to see us cover, let us know down in the comments below. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hey, it's Ratted here. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel. We put out multiple new videos each week and we appreciate all of your support. Thanks for watching everyone, and cheers.